Today's episode might be the most important episode in the whole series, because we're going to discuss not just how we can know what's true, but even more importantly, how we can know what's false. Hey there, folks. Bertram the Barely Bearable Atheist here, continuing our series on the book I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist by Geisler and Turek. Last time, they introduced us to the apologist's secret weapon, a surefire approach to winning arguments that they called the Roadrunner tactic. And sure enough, it does work, provided you only ever argue with folks who's kind enough to serve you up a self-defeating argument. Or at least an argument that you can turn into a self-defeating straw man. Anyways, this week we're looking at a section entitled, Can We Know the Truth? But before we get into that, I want to take just a few minutes to talk about exactly how we do go about knowing what's true and what ain't. So the first thing we need to do is to be clear on what we mean by objective truth. When I say objective truth here, I'm talking about that which is consistent with objective reality. And by objective reality, I mean that which exists independently of our perceptions of it. The most important thing to know about objective reality is that it is self-consistent. And there's two parts to self-consistency. Number one, of course, is that it don't contradict itself, what we call the law of non-contradiction. A thing can't both be true and be false in the same way at the same time. That's part of the self-consistency of objective reality. The second part is that objective reality is integrated with itself. That is to say, no one part of objective reality is completely isolated from the rest of objective reality. Every true fact is connected to other facts that's as true as the first one, the whole network of integrated, self-consistent truth. That means that every true fact is going to imply other facts that's equally true, which is why science is possible. We can observe certain true facts in objective reality, and those facts is going to be connected to still other true facts, including facts we ain't observed yet. And we can follow the connections from the facts we do know to the ones we don't know yet, and that's how we can discover new facts. It's a consequence of the fact that objective reality is self-consistent. But this leads to an interesting observation, which is that anytime we talk about something we call the truth, we's inevitably taking it out of context to some degree. Every objective truth is related to other objective truths, which are related to still more truths, and on and on and on it goes until eventually we find out that every truth is related one way or another, directly or indirectly, to every other truth. So if we're going to try to tell the truth, sooner or later we're going to have to stop following all those related truths, or we'll never get to the end of whatever it is we're trying to say. And that means that ultimately we can't know the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, because there's only one truth, which is a giant all-encompassing network of related facts about every possible aspect of the entirety of objective reality, past, present, and future, from the tiniest subatomic particle to the most inconceivably large supragalactic megastructure. Knowing the truth in the ultimate sense means being omniscient, which none of us is. The best we can do is to look at parts of the truth, knowing that we's leaving out almost all of it, and then stick to saying whatever's closest to what we find in objective reality. Now that's the safest and most reliable strategy, because objective reality is the entirety of truth, known and unknown. So the closer we conform our beliefs to objective reality as far as we know it, the less likely we are to be too far off when it comes to the parts that we don't know. And surprise, surprise, that's what skepticism is. Skepticism ain't about denying things, it's about staying as close as possible to what we can find in objective reality. people tends to think that skepticism means denial because they keeps wanting to believe stuff that don't conform to objective reality. And skeptics keep trying to tell them that that ain't right. That's a side issue. So, objective reality is a single, interconnected network of coherent, non-contradictory facts. And objective truth is that which is consistent with objective reality, which we can know some of, but can't know all of. At some point, we're just going to have to stop following all the interrelated truths and just rely on generally accepted ideas about what the rest of it supposedly is, which means that everything we call truth is going to be, at best, a part of the truth. And in fact, even Geisler and Turek alluded to this back in their introduction on page 25. Quote, "As limited human beings, we do not possess the type of knowledge that will provide us with absolute proof of God's existence or non-existence. Outside of the knowledge of our own existence, we deal in the realm of probability. Whatever we've concluded about the existence of God, it's always possible that the opposite conclusion is true." End quote. And of course, the reason we deal in the realm of probability is because no matter how much we know, there's always something more that we don't, just due to the nature of truth. And that's why it's so important to stick as close as possible to what we actually do find in objective reality, because objective reality is the standard by which truth needs to be measured. And the good news is that once we understand what objective truth is, we also have the tools to determine what's objectively false. Which is good, because most of the time it's a lot easier to tell when something ain't true than to be sure of something that is. For everything that is consistent with objective reality, there's tons of things that ain't. And since truth by definition is whatever is consistent with objective reality, then whatever is inconsistent with objective reality is false by definition. And of course, whatever's inconsistent with itself must also be false, because it can't be consistent with objective reality if it ain't even consistent with itself. And it's also false if it ain't integrated with objective reality, since every true fact in objective reality is integrated with other true facts. So in other words, if someone says something that sounds like it might be consistent with objective reality, but it implies other alleged facts that ain't consistent with objective reality, then they's more than likely making a false statement. And what you'll often see happening is that you'll point out how their statement is inconsistent with objective reality, and they'll invent new ad hoc assumptions to try and make it sound like it still could be true. And these new assumptions will also be false and will introduce new inconsistencies, which will require new ad hoc assumptions, create new inconsistency, and on it goes.
You see, Pinocchio, a lie keeps growing and growing until it's as plain as the nose on your face.
This is why Occam's razor works. A false statement has an endless and exponential series of inconsistencies that it needs to explain, so it's going to require an endless and exponential series of additional ad hoc assumptions to try and make it sound true. Whereas a true statement is already consistent with objective reality, and therefore it don't have to add all the extra stuff. So a true statement ends up being simpler than a false one. And that's the advantage of using a definition of objective truth that's based on consistency with objective reality. We can use objective reality itself as a reliable standard for determining which statements is more likely to be true and which ones is more likely to be false. And you can't get that kind of utility out of Geisler and Turek's absolutist, universalist, exclusivist definition of truth. Because they ain't really looking for truth. They's looking for a big metaphorical stick they can use to whack someone upside the head with if and they don't want to obey what Geisler and Turek tell them the truth is. So, anyways, after that long but important introductory discussion, let's see how Geisler and Turek answer their own question. The full title of this section is, quote, "Can Truth Be Known? Knock, knock, ... End quote. And here's an excerpt from the first paragraph. Quote, D. James Kennedy created a door-to-door evangelism technique called Evangelism Explosion, EE. If you're a Christian, the EE technique allows you to quickly ascertain where a person is spiritually. End quote. This technique is basically a script in which the Christian asks a prospective convert, if you was to die tonight and stand before God, and he asked you, why should I let you into heaven, how would you respond? And Geisler then goes on to tell a story about a time he used Kennedy's EE technique to convert a self-described atheist to Christianity. And that's it. That's the entire contents of this section. That's their answer to the question, can truth be known? I had to go back and check the section heading to make sure I hadn't accidentally skipped a page or something. But no, that's it. It ain't a typo or an editorial mistake. That actually is how they answer the question. So I cheated a bit and read the first couple paragraphs from the next section, which is entitled, quote, Can All Religions Be True? The opening paragraph or so goes like this, quote, the moral of the EE story is that complete agnosticism or skepticism is self-defeating. Agnostics and skeptics make the truth claim that truth claims cannot be made. They say that the truth can't be known, but then claim that their views are true. You can't have it both ways. So we've established that truth can be known. In fact, it's undeniable. End quote. And I reckon that sort of explains their reasoning. See, in the story, they maneuvered the guy at the door into saying he didn't think we could know the truth, and then meep, meep, they pulled a roadrunner on him and said, is it true that we can't know the truth? And boom, gotcha. Remember what I said before about how Christians was going to try and twist everything into denial that truth exists so they could use Geisler and Turek's roadrunner tactic? Yeah, that's exactly what Geisler and his partner did in this little story. And I want to talk about that in a minute, but first I want to address all the fallacies and falsehoods Geisler and Turek is guilty of in this short snippet. The first and most obvious fallacy here is the false dichotomy between either you can know truth or you can't know any truth. As I mentioned a while ago, back when Geisler and Turek was talking about what atheists and skeptics can know, they was all, oh, we can't know anything for sure, everything's just possible probabilities. And now that they's talking about folks knowing Christian truths, they's all, oh, absolutely, truth can be known, it's undeniable. It's a very popular double standard among apologists. They's agnostics when it comes to what skeptics can know, and dogmatic when it comes to what Christians can know. Fact of the matter is, there's things we can know and things we can't. We can't know the exact value of pi, for instance, or the exact value of the square root of 2. But on the other hand, whatever the exact square root of 2 is, we definitely can know that it ain't 117 or any other integer. So some things can be known and some things can't. And some things we can know ain't true, even if we can't know what is. But that means that the question, can truth be known, is a misleading question. The correct response ought to be, can the truth about what be known? By asking the wrong question, Geisler and Turek done drove off the road and into the swamp, and they don't even know it. Second, when they say that agnosticism and skepticism is self-defeating, all they's really saying is that they don't know the first thing about agnosticism or skepticism. Heck, they was making an agnostic argument themselves back in the introduction when they said everything is just probabilities and that there's a chance they could be wrong. So they's calling their own argument self-defeating. But that's because they's defining agnosticism wrong. Agnosticism, in the context of religion, means not claiming more certainty about God's existence or non-existence than human beings can rightly claim to know, which is basically what Geisler and Turek themselves was saying on page 25. And yes, I know that agnostic comes from the word gnostic, which means knowing, and the prefix a, which means not, but that's the etymology of the word. That ain't how it's used in religious discussions. And likewise, skepticism is basically the idea that truth claims should not be accepted unless and until they can be shown to be verifiably consistent with objective reality. It's pretty much the exact opposite of denying the possibility of ever knowing the truth. In fact, it's a methodology for reliably knowing the truth. Geisler and Turek is just trying to twist things they don't understand into something they can pull a roadrunner on, whether it makes any sense or not. And finally, of course, he's committing the fallacy of equating Christian conversion with knowing the truth. Okay, so the guy became a Christian. So what? Lots of folks convert to lots of religions. Just because somebody converted to your religion don't make it the truth, and it definitely don't prove that truth in general can be known. So like I said, rhetorically speaking, they done drove off the road into the swamp and they don't even know it. But now let's go back and look at that story in more detail, because I think it gives us a good illustration of just how manipulative and dishonest Christian evangelism can be. And it ain't just because they's following a predefined script, neither. The story starts out with Norm Geisler and a fellow named Ron going door to door trying to convert whoever answers their knock. And don't expect to hear too much more from this Ron feller, because this is a Norm Geisler story. Poor Ron ain't going to get any lines at all. So anyways, they go up to a house and a feller named Don opens it. And they go through their script about God saying, "Why should I let you into heaven?" But Don replies, "Well, why shouldn't you let me in?" Which throws them for a minute, because that ain't in the script. But Geisler, being the hero of the story, manages to turn it around by saying, "Well, what if we said to you, why shouldn't you let us into your house?" And Don says he wouldn't let him in, and Geisler turns that into, well, then God ain't going to let you in neither. So round one goes to Geisler, the trained evangelist who came all ready and prepared to out-argue any honest, unwary fellow who gave him an opening to exploit. Round two starts with Don telling him he's an atheist. And by the way, I'm leaving out all the purdy parts where Geisler makes the whole scene sound like the Christian, with God's help, is running circles around the poor atheist, logically speaking. We heard enough of that in Geisler's story about the debate he supposedly won at Rice University. So anyway, Geisler starts with the manipulation, asking Don if he's absolutely sure that there ain't no God. And when Don admits that he ain't absolutely sure, Geisler tells Don that he ain't an atheist. He's an agnostic. And notice Geisler is completely dominating the conversation at this point. He ain't asking Don what he believes, and he ain't having an open, honest discussion about the possible nuances of those beliefs. He's just flat out telling Don what Don's own beliefs are. Okay. So Don agrees, well, then he must be an agnostic, and then Geisler starts laying a trap for him by asking, are you a ordinary atheist who don't know anything for sure, or are you a ornery atheist who can't know anything for sure? And notice neither one of them options is an accurate definition of religious agnosticism. But you see the bait there? By calling the two possibilities ordinary versus ornery, he's making one side look nicer than the other. Now, Don obviously has no idea what kind of agnostic he is, since he was only informed 2 seconds ago that he even is an agnostic. But he's probably feeling some resistance to Geisler's domineering approach, if not outright resentment. So naturally, he's going to be more attracted to the more adversarial option just to assert himself. So he picks ornery. And gotcha! That's where the trap was. As soon as Don agrees that he can't know anything for sure, Geisler goes, "Can you know for sure that you can't know anything for sure? Meep, meep." From there, it's all downhill. Geisler has won every round, like he usually does in his own stories, and has gotten Don to admit that the only reason he don't believe in God is because no one showed him any evidence. So Geisler gives him a book of apologetics, and Guy takes it and reads it, and sometime later he converts. Geisler don't mention any of the social interactions that likely took place after that initial contact. No, somehow personal relationships and new friendships and new social connections and all that kind of stuff, that had nothing to do with it at all. It was all based strictly on the evidence, folks. And if you believe that, Geisler and Turek have plenty more they'd like to sell you. So the real moral of the story ain't that, quote, truth can be known, unquote. The real moral of the story is that people who's trained in scripted, manipulative interactions have an advantage over honest, unwary laymen who ain't as prepared, which is why you see similar results among evangelical Christians and evangelical Mormons and evangelical Muslims and so on and so on. And that's pretty sad, really. But that's pretty much the end of the story. And it's kind of remarkable just how far away that story ended up from any kind of relevant answer to the question of, can we know the truth? It's almost as if the real answer to the question weren't likely to support their case, so they went on as long and far-fetched a tangent as possible to avoid it. But on the other hand, at least it gave us an opportunity to talk about what truth really is and how we can reliably know as much of it as we're capable of. So yeah, I'm sure there's more could be said, but that about does it for me for today. Thanks for watching, and please be kind wherever possible.